Trump administration has reversed a long-standing policy in regard to Israeli settlements in Palestinian territory in the West Bank. Now, the White House apparently does not view these settlements as a violation of international law, even though international law indicates that they absolutely are. Now, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced this reversal in a press conference. Let's hear what he had to say.
The Trump administration is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements. US public statements on settlement activities in the West Bank have been inconsistent over decades. In 1978, the Carter administration categorically concluded that Israel's establishment of civilian settlements was inconsistent with international law. However, in 1981, President Reagan disagreed with that conclusion and stated that he didn't believe that the settlements were inherently illegal. However, in December 2016, at the very end of the previous administration, Secretary Kerry changed decades of this careful bipartisan approach by publicly reaffirming the supposed illegality of settlements. After carefully studying all sides of the legal debate, this administration agrees with President Reagan. The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not, per se, inconsistent with international law.
There were many lies in that statement, and I want to do a little bit of fact checking. First off, he says that the Trump administration is simply doing a reversal of Obama-era policy in regard to the Israeli settlements. First off, no, this is not Obama-era policy. In fact, this was long-standing policy dating back to the late 1970s, or so the late 70s. So the Trump administration's decision reversed a 1978 legal opinion by the State Department concluding that the settlements were inconsistent with international law. Pompeo said that ruling hasn't advanced the cause of peace. Well, look, every time there is increased violence in that region, it's simply because of Israeli aggression. I mean, look, there are some cases where Palestinians will throw rocks or they'll do something that will provoke members of the Israeli military. But in the vast majority of cases, the response from Palestinians is to the fact that the Israeli government keeps building settlements in their territory, right? And it's a big problem, it's a big provocation, and it leads to an increase in violence. What the Trump administration is doing here is not gonna lead to more peace. Pompeo said the decision would provide greater space for the Israelis and Palestinians to negotiate over the status of the settlements. Oh, I'm sure that the Israeli government is real interested in negotiating the status of the settlements.
And the Palestinians are probably thinking, man, we could really get these negotiations started if only another 100 or 200,000 Israelis were moved to the West Bank.
It's just so absurd. Make any sense. And look, this is all about garnering support for Netanyahu, who is still dealing with an election mess in Israel, right? The margin between him and Benny Gantz was razor thin.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to figure out what to do. There could be a third election in Israel as a result of this. And so in order to garner support and help Netanyahu out, Trump has agreed to do this. But more importantly, Trump is worried about his own reelection. And he wants to do something that's gonna appeal to his base. And his base does consist of evangelical voters who love the idea of doing away with US policy or reversing US policy when it comes to these settlements. One other thing that I wanted to correct Pompeo on. So he mentions Ronald Reagan quite a bit. He says, oh no, Ronald Reagan, like he totally agrees with what we're doing now. We're just doing what Ronald Reagan wanted to do. But here's what the reality is, according to the New York Times. President Ronald Reagan also told reporters shortly after taking office in 1981 that he did not believe the settlements were illegal, but called new Israeli communities in Palestinian territory unnecessarily provocative. So the way that Pompeo sold this was as if Reagan thought like, no, it's a great idea to build more of these settlements in Palestinian territory.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case.
And they don't care, like Pompeo doesn't care. It's not like they spent the last 2 years going back through all these legal texts and figuring out seriously whether it's consistent with international law or that. They don't care. They don't care. Obviously, almost every international body thinks that it's a horrible decision / also illegal, but they felt the same way about us reestablishing our
Jerusalem?
Yeah, exactly.
As the capital?
Exactly. They thought that that was a horrible idea too, but they did it anyway because they're not interested in international law. Their base despises the very idea of international law or the US being deferential to the decisions of international bodies. So why would they care about that? They don't care about it. We are hampered by the fact that we are interested in the security of both the Palestinian and the Israeli people. But that is not a hindrance that they're experiencing. They think that it's inconvenient that the Palestinians are in that area, but they just want to take the territory. They feel like they earned it decades ago, that it should be theirs, and they will use whatever they need, whether it's Donald Trump's incredibly supportive policy in multiple different areas involving the West Bank and Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. So that's been consistent. Or if it's Obama saying that hypothetically he's going to take a harder line, but in reality he's incredibly deferential as well.
And look, I love that you brought up the security of both the Israeli people who are separate from the Israeli government. So understand, when we have criticism, it's toward the Israeli government and what it does. But the Israeli people are being placed in harm's way. And this does increase violence in the area because it's beyond a provocative act, right? I mean, you're encroaching on Palestinian territory. Palestinians are already getting squeezed as it is. And so it creates an unsafe situation for both parties. But my point is, the Israeli government doesn't really care about that. For them, this is all about political gain and political power. And it's unfortunate that we have a president like Donald Trump who is encouraging this and also giving the green light for more of these settlements.
Yeah, and that's why it's so refreshing to see Bernie Sanders talking about these issues on the campaign trail in a way that we don't often hear people even, like Obama would occasionally say that he's interested in some sort of accommodation, but he didn't even talk about it prospectively in the way that Bernie Sanders does now. And we know that Bernie Sanders would actually make good on it.
Absolutely, and I just want to leave you with the actual UN resolution in regard to these settlements and what international law does say about them. So the Security Council reaffirms that Israel's establishment of settlements in Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, had no legal validity, constituting a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the vision of two states living side by side in peace and security within internationally recognized borders. So that is what international law entails. But if Donald Trump and his administration don't care about domestic law, what would make anyone think that they would care about international law?
And it's incredibly consistent with the way that the UN approaches any territorial acquisition in war. They know that winning a battle and temporarily gaining control of territory is of very little value. But if you can move your population in there, that makes it much harder for them to ever be moved out. And so it becomes a permanent gain to your territory. They don't want to incentivize wars of aggression. Making sure that you can't hold on to any territory you gain under international law is a great way to do that. But of course, the US government is not going to care about that. Donald Trump just a couple of days ago said, we've got the oil, we're keeping the oil in Syria, which is itself a war crime. You're not supposed to be able to take the resources, you're not supposed to be able to permanently hold the territory. Those are the two main ways that you stop wars of aggression. And we have the single most powerful country in the world saying, no, we're done with that.
Right.
That materially increases the chance of interstate wars in the future.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.